morning. The Treasury Department is taking over the Iran war from the Pentagon. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is apparently telling American allies in the Gulf and in the Middle East that there aren't going to be any more big military strikes against the Iranians anytime soon as the focus shifts to economic pressure. That is according to Axios, and that is as President Trump posts on Truth Social. I've just been informed by the United States Navy that all mines have been removed and or detonated from within the international waters of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been notified that any ship or boat placing new mines will be immediately and systematically destroyed. Iran ally Russia just got a rare visit from the CIA director, John Ratcliffe. The CIA's jet was in Moscow. There's a lot that we don't know about the agenda, but the U.S. is still trying to stop Russia from sending weapons to Iran and end the Ukraine-Russia war and talk Russia out of future incursions elsewhere in Europe. Closer to home, Canada is retaliating against the United States with some new tariffs, 50% on American steel and aluminum products, 25% on American dairy, fish, and seafood, and 15% on select farm equipment and machinery, up to $20 billion. Prime Minister Carney says in the face of unjustified American tariffs, Canadians have shown resolve, purpose, and strength. President Trump was asked if this all happened because the Canadians moved the goalposts during negotiations. The president says, that sounds like me. They have to pay a fair amount. And if they don't pay a fair amount, we won't make a deal. That's fine. And now the president has a new idea for payback. He posted, the United States is giving serious consideration to changing the name of Lake Ontario to Lake America, in that we don't expect to be doing business with Ontario any longer. The president did this a couple months ago with the Gulf of Mexico. No reason that to expect him not to at least try with Lake Ontario. And when you talk to folks around here, all the way on up to the president, they will tell you that he thinks the hardest country to deal with is not somebody that we're at war with, for example. It is Canada. Hey, thank you. Guess what? 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 Doomsday plane. Open the door. If you want peace, prepare for war. But guess what? Guess what? Everything will be okay. Guess what day it is? It's hump
day. It's like, I just love those memes. Oh, Jerry, bringing us back. Come on. Who loves the memes? Can I get some shout out? Can I get a cheer for Jerry? Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Sorry about that. We just flew back in from the White House. Sorry. I hit the wrong button, actually.
Never go full retard.
There we go. I haven't slept a lot in the last couple of days. We just flew back in from Washington, D.C. My apologies to you. I actually punched the camera off button. Camera on and locked and loaded. Can we get a shout out in the chat for Jerry? Sweet Jerry, that is an awesome meme. It's great to start the day off. Ladies and gentlemen, I have news to deliver to you from the White House. I have news to deliver to you. I spent the night last night at the White House. And, well, I didn't spend the night at the White House, but we hung out there for a little bit and learned quite a lot. And I am here to bring you uplifting. I'm here to bring you tidings of great joy. I'm here to tell you that things are about to happen that will change the world. And that's okay, because it's going to change the world for the better. But that the Trump administration has heard a lot of the saber rattlings from their base, and they are going to take decisive and very, very strong actions. And it's going to be happening very quickly. And it's going to be a very exciting fall. That's all I can tell you. I don't know what else to say. You promise to be off the record of these things. So, you know, Chatham House rules kind of thing. You sit back and you listen and you absorb, and people can talk freely. And we heard from the highest echelons of the Trump administration, and on every conceivable front, militarily, economically, immigration fronts, and the support of the American family and us as Americans on this land, like these concerns have been heard by the administration. And I was joined by a couple of other, let's just call it key commentators on said issues. And boy, howdy, are we in for a wild ride. So buckle up, Buttercup. It is going to be an incredible run. We are in the last week of August. Today is Wednesday, August 26th, 2026. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin with the CIA landing in Moscow. The CIA landing in Moscow yesterday. Ooh, what is that all about? Something big is happening. Klein, you haven't done this in a while. No, Klein, we got to do our first ad. Klein, that's okay. Here we go. We have Ted Cruz on the show today. All right, we have Ted Cruz on the show today. Oh, you can pop that up. Here's a photo from outside of the White House last night. We spent all night there. It was crazy. And then right after we left, this is Josh Howerton. It's a cool dude, really great dude. I'd never met him before, but he has an awesome YouTube channel and he's a pastor from the Dallas area. Nick Freitas, you know Nick Freitas? And yeah, talking about Christian, talking about a Christian revival in the White House. And then lo and behold, we're walking out of the White House in the small hours of the morning, and who greets us but a bunch of crusaders? Who greets us but a bunch of like the Dominicans are waiting there, ready for the crusade. Are you ready for the crusade? Are you ready to go on the next crusade? Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to seize your destiny? That's what we're going to do today. Okay. We have information about why the CIA director landed in Moscow on an emergency private and secret military jet yesterday. Let's jump into it. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. First, we need to have a little talk about how healthy you are. We talked a little bit about Maha yesterday as well. Food is critically important. A lot of people are very frustrated about the price of groceries, the price of gas. All of this stuff was brought up. All of these grievances aired. And I'm telling you, man, 120 Life, an awesome drink, an awesome way to start feeling better. You're at the end of summer. Get healthier routines started in the fall and into celebration seasons and holiday seasons. 120 Life is a spectacular all-natural blend of 5 critical all-natural vegetables and fruits that are so good for your heart, so good for your daily functions, and so good for your mortality. High blood pressure is what we are trying to fix here. High blood pressure is a real killer. Most people don't feel it because, well, it gets really serious really, really fast. The highest risk factors in mortality is your high blood pressure. So, ladies and gentlemen, start drinking 120 Life because this is a way to lower it all naturally. Go to 120life.com. That's 120life.com and use the code Benny for 20% off. Try risk-free. Your blood pressure doesn't come down. You get a full refund. 120life.com. Start living life and living life to the fullest. Okay, here we go. Here we go, Klein. For heaven's sakes, this is what happened. It is really hard to get from DC to Tampa. I was on a 5 a.m. flight. It's in time for the show. And yeah, so forgive us as we like sort of stretch our legs here. You can ask Kate. You can ask my wife. You just tear in. Klein, do you remember doing these red eye flights right into the studio? And then having to just flip the camera on as soon as we jump off the plane. So that's what we did. That's where we are right now. We literally walked right off the plane, and we want to show up for you, and we want to never miss a show. We're going to lock in. Here we go. This is what locked in looks like, man. This is locked in right here. President Vladimir Putin reacts to a B-2 flyover. This is what I wanted to see in the American-Sino relationship. This is what I wanted to see in the American-Russian relationship. This is what I want to see in the American-Iranian relationship. I don't see any reason why we should be enemies with any nation at all. There are so many positive factors to being at peace with one another And an ugly peace is preferable to a hot war virtually every single time. Okay? I think there maybe are some times in history you could make the argument for war, but I'm telling you that over the last modern history of America, there's been no reason for the wars that we've been in. And there's been a lot of reasons to have discussions and come to agreements, even if they are ugly or they're with ugly people. And I loved seeing it. And this is Trump mogging Putin. And it's amazing what Trump did here. This is Trump standing next to the brand new F-22 Raptors, this sophisticated jet, and then he flies a B-2 bomber over Vladimir Putin. It's one of the most alpha thing a president has ever done. And you can see that Putin, you can watch Putin rubberneck this thing. Look at Putin, like Putin spinning. Here's another more static view of this. Look, watch this. Have you ever seen Putin like this? Freaking awesome. The Trump administration has tried to get Russia and China on board with the game plan in Iran. Without Russia and China's backing, Iran fundamentally collapses. And what we witnessed yesterday was something that we haven't seen in close to a decade. Since the start of Russian hostilities towards Ukraine. We saw a military jet flying deep into the heart of Russia, just one, a C-17 Globemaster III. This is the most sophisticated military jet that we have, and it landed in Moscow. What was going on here? Everybody, there was even Russians filming the landing of this plane, yelling in Russian, "We are under attack." I guess it's like an American military jet. And everyone said, "What's going on here?" American cargo flight to Moscow. There was a American motorcade that was brought through Moscow. And we now know this to be the CIA director. So CIA Director John Ratcliffe headed to Moscow yesterday. Now, what's that about? I mean, first off, Vladimir Putin is a man of the Intel Committee, a man of the intelligence community. Correction there. Vladimir Putin speaks the language of the intelligence community. Vladimir Putin is a man who grew up in the KGB, who is obsessed with our CIA. And John Ratcliffe is someone who, while a sleeper in the Trump administration, has a deep connection to President Trump and is a steady hand on these things, is beloved by the president, I can tell you this, and is trusted by the president, and is probably more impressive to be sent to John Ratcliffe than to be sent like a J.D. Vance or a Marco Rubio in certain situations. And I think this is one of those situations. John Ratcliffe also just stopped in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba, and did a little meeting with the Cubans. Something big is happening right now. And Ratcliffe's presence in Moscow is signaling some pretty big things, some pretty interesting things. Now, this just allow me to nerd out for 1 second. One of the reasons why they fly this size of a plane, and not like some little private jet, that might be maybe easier, is because they want to bring in the silver bullet. This is something that travels. It's a mobile skiff. It's an Airstream trailer, but it's retrofitted so that you can't hit it with spy waves or electronic devices or any type of spyware. And so this is, I nerded out. I don't know if Ratcliffe did his meetings in this, but when the high level, like Hegseth travels with one of these all the time, when high level people in our government travel into these war zones or into these hostile countries, they do so with the silver bullet. Freaking awesome. So cool. So anyway, this is part of the reason why they take such a monstrous plane into these areas. And so, yeah, I don't know, but I think it's cool. Anyway, here's the, here we go from TMZ. Silver Bullet Airstream trailer pod is used by Secretary of Defense on overseas trip. So this is how you this is how you have security and you can sit there and you can work on these military planes. Here's what it looks like inside. It's crazy. I think it's awesome. It's kind of just like straight out of a movie. Anyway, very rare view from inside the Silver Eagle. Okay. So what was Ratcliffe doing? CIA Director Ratcliffe visits Moscow. Nobody was sure. But there are some reports that are beginning to develop that has to do with Ukraine. And triangulating Ukraine and Russia and Iran and America and China and Taiwan, and I think attempting to set up something big, a grand peace deal. That's my impression. I'm not going to tell you why I think that. We've just been chit-chatting with people. And I think that what the CIA director was doing in Moscow yesterday was speaking Putin's language, handing over very sensitive information about what's about to happen in the future, opening up channels of communication through the intelligence channels in a way that Putin would really respect. I have been bothered by Russian bombs falling in NATO territory. We've seen this. We've seen Russia attacking some of the infrastructure in NATO countries like Italy and Berlin and Germany. And I think that's, of course, troubling. And maybe this is a de-escalation opportunity. Trump fundamentally understands that the ending of these wars and the ending of these conflicts are the single most popular buoy to any administration. It makes you untouchable from an electoral standpoint because the market soars, oil crashes, the economy starts to rock again. The economy loves peace. The economy loves stability. They like it when the bombs are not falling. War is never good for the economy. War is bad for the economy. It's something that it's sort of a misnomer. War is only good for a greedy few piggies that live in and around the Pentagon. It's terrible for the rest of us. Every war in my lifetime or yours has just added trillions to the national debt and has not materially produced any benefit to any of our lives, period. And so getting these things wrapped up and done, I think Russia is the final key. China is not in a hot war with anyone. They're in a cold war with everyone. China's in a cold war. They're still trying to buy Iranian oil. They're still trying to fund Iran, so on and so forth, but they're not firing bombs or missiles. But this is, I think, going to be a wild play. Now, what you've seen is now a massive pressure campaign. This is what it looks like in Moscow. This is Moscow version of a Amazon warehouse called Wild Berries. And you can see them ablaze because Ukrainian drones, which are operated by the CIA, let's just be perfectly honest. Ukraine is a client state of the CIA. So effectively sending the CIA director there is like having Voldemort Zelensky come in and meet with Putin, to be quite honest. Well, the reports are that he didn't actually meet with Putin. I'm not sure I actually trust that at all. I don't know. Fleet of doomsday planes spotted over U.S. hours after CIA boss visits Moscow. Look at that. These little doomsday planes, of course, the kind of planes that get airborne if we are under attack, that keep sort of the critical players in our federal government in the sky, able to command. I don't know if there's any connection there. President Trump talking about this morning on Glenn Beck's show. Donald Trump called in And he called this just a routine mission. Of course, it's all classified, right? So what else can he say? But I can tell you it's more than just that. I'm not calling the president a liar, but there's something big happening here. The word on the street is that America is triangulating the Russians over Cuba, Ukraine, Iran, and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Let's go ahead and listen to the president.
This is in Russia. Rumors are saying Putin is going to test NATO resolve, all the way to speculation that is crazy. He's going to strike England, all the way to this is maybe the U.S. telling them about the Iranian sanctions, saying we're serious about them. Can you tell me why our CIA director flew in the middle of the night to meet with the Russians?
Well, none of the above. He's there on, very sort of semi-routine. I hate to disappoint people. We would like to see the war with Ukraine end. That's a war would have never started, Glenn, if I were president. That's one of the negatives of not having it done that way. I think this way has actually turned out to be bigger in many ways. But you wouldn't have had the war with Ukraine, and you wouldn't have had 25 million people coming into our country like they did, just come in like we were a bunch of fools. It was so sad. But they, 20, and I think the number's higher than 25, frankly. But they came in from prisons, and they were drug dealers, and they were murderers, and everything else, and they poured into our country. You wouldn't have had that. But you would not have had the war in Ukraine. John Ratcliffe is a fantastic guy. He's the head of the CIA, and he is not in there for any of the things that you said. Now, something may come out of it. We're working very hard to get that war ended. And frankly, they both want to see it ended.
CIA.
So Donald Trump asked, what's the CIA director doing there? And he says, ending the Ukraine war. Let me just distill all of this. After watching hundreds of thousands of Donald Trump speeches and rallies and comments to the press, let me tell you what. Donald Trump saying, no, he's there to end the war. He's there to end the war in Iran. Russian officials have briefed Iran that the CIA director, Ratcliffe's Moscow visit, delivered a message with the U.S. asking Moscow to press Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, warning that Russian entities would otherwise face designations under Operation Economic Outcast. Russia declined and told Iran that the threatened measures were of limited consequence, according to two senior Iranian sources with knowledge of the briefing. And we know that these dirtbags lie constantly and are constantly trying to manipulate the press. So take this for what it's worth. The message also warned that Russian banks, traders, and shipping entities tied to Iranian oil, gold, and aviation will be sanctioned under the operation unless Moscow moves to close these channels. I have said for a long time, after viewing what Trump is doing and how he's moving right now, that what America is establishing here is total energy control and dominance worldwide. Control the energy, control the future. Control the energy that powers every data center, that powers every AI, that powers our biggest enemy, China. China controls our manufacturing right now. That's not good. But if we control all the energy that controls China's manufacturing, well, that is good. Well, then that's a choke point. Then that's a control point. And that puts us, once again, on top. And so keeping the energy flows within the sphere of influence of the North American hemisphere is critical. Russia has a lot of gas. It's not the same as the Middle East. It's not the same as Venezuela. It's not the same even as Canadian fuel, but they have a lot of it. And it's sanctioned. And the war in Ukraine is now a war of attrition. It is now capable. We now have the capacities to strike deep into the hearts of Russia or strike Moscow. What's the last time that an army was able to strike Moscow? Was it Napoleon? To truly hit Moscow? Was it Napoleon? Didn't happen in World War II. A lot of sound and fury. But now Moscow is being struck on a daily basis. And there are going to be pressures that I think could be applied that could change the world forever here. Iran is a client state of Russia and China. And if Iran were to be made by their last remaining allies into compliance for great deals for China and Russia, that seems to be the economic triangulation here. Let's go ahead and keep reading. Or listening. Why did the CIA director go to Russia? Rumors say Putin is going to test NATO's resolve, Iranian sanctions, Russia attacking England. None of the above. But it's also classified. So it's like he's committing a crime if he just like goes out and says it. Update yesterday from the Kremlin spokesperson. Here we go. CIA director did not meet with Putin. They made that very clear. Okay. However, Putin has been briefed on the outcome of the meetings with CIA Director Ratcliffe. Conversations took place through intelligence channels, and he did not specify the subject of the CIA director's discussion with Russian intelligence agencies. He says it's premature to discuss the impact of the CIA director's discussion with intelligence agencies in regard to resolving the crisis in U.S.-Russia relations. Again, this comes at the heels of Marco Rubio meeting with Lavrov. I think it was approximately a month ago. And, well, things are happening. Things are happening. Ratcliffe's Moscow mission, U.S. pressed Russia to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And this is according to Iranian sources. CIA met in order to try and break Iran. Marco Rubio telling his allies that there will be no new strikes on Iran for now, that the administration is happy with how things are going in the Strait. And why shouldn't they be? Iran's effectively admitting defeat. The Iranian leadership is saying what we all know to be true, which is that you cannot fight a war if you cannot feed your army. You cannot fight a war if the people are in a state of revolt, if the people can't eat. Go check in on, and Russia would know this quite well, 1918, Tsarist Russia. What happens when the people are hungry? What happens when you can't get your supply lines? The entire front falls apart. The entire Eastern Front falls to pieces. And the entire regime collapses. And so all war is about logistics. And the reality in Iran is that those logistics look very, very bad right now. There are gas lines. Danny, I don't know if this is in the script, but ironically, most ironically and bitterly, there are gas lines all throughout Iran. Iran doesn't have enough refined oil for their own people right now. And that's on top of course, the crippling sanctions that were applied this week by Scott Bessent. And this is just a negotiating tactic in order to probably end the war. Now, Iran yesterday is begging for the return to the MOU. Iran is signaling, and they've signed a deal with Oman to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. They signed their own deal with their Omani partners, and now Iranian leadership is like signaling, flashing red. Please let us just go back to the MOU. Let us go back to the original MOU that we destroyed. Iran sets Hormuz conditions through Pakistan. Look at this. A source close to Iran's negotiating team told Tasnim, this is the Iranian version of like official news channel, that Pakistan's army chief carried no U.S. threats during his visit and instead sought to reopen negotiations. Iran outlined its Strait of Hormuz condition, including a U.S. return to the Islamabad agreement, that's called the MOU, which we were perfectly happy about. We were thrilled about that. It was a good deal. It ended the war. It was clean. And it got us out of a very dicey situation. It got everybody out of a very dicey situation. It de-escalated, which is what you need in these circumstances. So Pakistan is expected to relay Tehran's position to Washington today. So, ladies and gentlemen, things are indeed happening. So the reality is that we asked the same thing quite a bit last night. Like, what's going on with the CIA boss in Moscow? This hasn't happened in a very long time. And the wink and the nod that we got is it's got to be big. I think they're going to go for all of it. I think they're going to go for the gold. I think they're going to go for solving all the world's crises all at once. Trump has done a masterful job of applying pressure, of withstanding the pressures internally and domestically here in the country, and will, I think, emerge on top. You can see that right now in gasoline prices, which are still way too high, but they've fallen quite rapidly. It's always a way to tell that somebody knows something. And ladies and gentlemen, what do they know? I know that you should be buying gold. My friends at Advantage Gold can help you out. Advantage Gold is the way that I diversify into precious metals. Awesome company. Been with us for a long time, and we are with them. If you are 59 and a half years old and you don't want to be sitting in cash in your retirement, you can move part of your 401k or IRA into gold or tax-deferred, penalty-free. Gold rose 65% in 2025, and it's trading right now at a very attractive price. Has a capacity to really explode higher. Ladies and gentlemen, text Benny to 85545. That's Benny to 85545. Get your free gold investment kit and learn a simple IRS-approved way to move your 401k or IRA into physical gold, tax or penalty-free. Text Benny to 85545 to get your free gold investment kit. Advantage Gold today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we do have Ted Cruz. He is running late, and we got a very tight window today. Obviously, we came flying in this morning, so let's jump on some other good news, and we'll wait for Ted. Right? We'll wait for Ted. We got a lot of exciting things to talk with him about. President Trump delivering on believe me when I say this, it's going to get so much better. But the administration is now on a rampage to crack down on legal immigration into this country and the fraud that is endemic in that legal immigration. Can you tell we just rolled out of bed? That hair. Okay. Well, they say you should put up a hair light in your studio. Well, not on the side of your head. Whatever. We'll do it live. Trump administration pauses all visa appointment applications worldwide. Whoa. Okay. This is on top of a ruling that said you need to go back to your home country to apply for a visa. So a lot of people sneak into our country on foreign visas for student or travel, and then they apply for visas. They come here, chain migration, H-1B, O-1. They have so many different visa scam operations in this nation, and it is repulsive, and it's changing, of course, the culture of the nation itself. It's like such a fascinating allegory. It's such an interesting point. Like, every single culture is worth preserving except for our own, and I can't get my mind around that. Everybody loves going to Japan because of the Japanese, and everybody loves going to, I don't know, the rainforest, or preserving maybe the precious tribes of the North Sentinelese. All throughout the world, there's no shortage of libs that are crying about protectionist mechanisms to preserve these little precious cultures hidden or trapped, and dip them in amber. Everything except for ours. They are uniquely anti-Christian. And that is that is the messaging that needs to be sent out. These immigration policies are actually anti-Christendom policies. They're anti-Western culture, which is Christian culture. And they are designed in order to erode and destroy it. When Englishmen landed on our shores, they did not absorb the culture of the Indians. Englishmen landed on our shores just in a small little group. There were a lot more Indians than there were pilgrims. But when they landed here, they set up a colony and started running things immediately based on English law, tradition. They brought their religion, brought their firearms. They didn't immediately absorb the culture of because at that time, America was an Indian nation. It's a nation of Native Americans. And they worshiped the Great Spirit. They lived in huts. They had their own farming practices. They had their own Stone Age technology. The Pilgrims landing here didn't immediately adopt that way of life and start worshiping the Great Spirit, living outside and wearing moccasins, animal skins. The Englishmen who landed here brought England with them, brought their unique and strong culture with them, and changed America forever. It's called conquering a nation. We conquered it, built it, now we control it. Why would we ever assume that any person from Bangladesh, from India, from China, from anywhere, from Africa, why would we expect anybody from anywhere that comes from any other culture to not do the same? It cuts against human experience. Why is the American, uniquely the American, and we all know what an American is, why is ours the only culture not worth preserving? And the way that you erode it and destroy it is to bring in people from other cultures who create little Somalia, little Bangladesh, little India, everywhere that they go. I think that the tallest Hindu statue in the world is actually now in Texas. Well, that's not Texas culture. That's a bunch of Indians bringing Indian culture to Texas, not assimilating and parasitically using our nation and our riches and our treasury and our birthright for our children, which is the American dream, which is very simply defined as growing up on a clean street, being able to afford a house, being able to start a family of your own, having a white picket fence, a Labrador, a mail carrier, having something that is that reflects your grandparents' life, hopefully marginally better. But our Americans are being robbed of this through immigration scams, and then looking around and hearing the Muslim call to prayer, or seeing giant statues of demons being built throughout their land. This is in Texas. It's in Texas. It's a demon. It's a false god. Like, I don't care. Oh, they're peaceful people. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. It's a Christian nation founded on a Christian prayer to Jesus Christ, which is the Declaration of Independence. And so it doesn't matter to me, like, if you're peaceful or if you come from a place that's like not run by ISIS, it is irrelevant to me. It's not my culture. And when white people did this throughout the world, it was called colonization, and it was assumed that it was evil. But we are actively being colonized right now by people who hate us and people who are bringing India to our shores, or Somalia or Haiti to our shores. These are, by the way, cultures. I mean, you should stop. I mean, there should never be another Indian allowed to immigrate to America ever, because these are nations, and that goes for Haiti, and that goes for a lot of different countries that have rejected the West. These are countries that fundamentally reject the West. In India and in Haiti, there were bloody revolutions against the West, against our way of life. Why would we want anybody who, in Haiti's, I mean, there's like the most bloodthirsty, genocidal, they skinned all the white people, skinned their children, wore their clothes, of course, collapsed the single most prosperous French colony in the world, one of the most prosperous place in the Western Hemisphere. They destroyed it. The slaves that staged a slave revolt, and that created modern Haiti. Well, you rejected the West. You rejected our traditions. We shouldn't bring a single Haitian into this country for that exact reason. Fundamentally incompatible. But also, more importantly, your ancestor, your history, and your ancestors' history shows us everything we need to know about what you're here for. And so it cuts against human nature. It's a critical question that has to be approached from a very firm executive position, and that is what the Trump administration is doing. Trump administration issues a pause on all visa appointments for applicants worldwide. So you're a visa applicant. You apply to come to America. And now the Trump administration forces you to go home to apply to get your visa. They've also increased the fees for H-1B visas to $103,000 per applicant. It's amazing. So you go home, you're sitting there, you have to go back to India, you're waiting, and it's like amazing. Like, India is such a nightmare of a country. It's like, and I don't have any specific hatred for any of these places, but like you go look at what Mogadishu looks like, you go look at what New Delhi looks like, you'll look at these countries. I mean, they're filthy and disgusting, and people get so sick there. And it's like, why aren't you fixing your own country? You're trying to come here. Why aren't you fixing your own country? What is this? And by the way, when they come here, they immediately turn into Ilhan Omar. It's like you wave a magic wand and immediately it's like lecturing America. Like, why do we take that? Has anybody ever checked in on like where Ilhan Omar is from? And she comes here to lecture us? And that's what it's like constantly happening. It's happening right now with this guy who runs Y Combinator. There's this guy who's like this VC. He's had to lock his account because he called hiring Americans DEI, saying that Americans should have no right to hire other Americans. There should be no downward force that says Americans should hire, America is for Americans. This guy's getting absolutely pillared right now. I think he actually literally deleted his account. But we have fatigue up to here with people from the third world who come from dysfunctional countries coming here and then telling us how to run our nation. And so here it is. Yeah. A win for woke DEI is back. He quote tweets JD Vance saying, if an American corporation needs workers, it should hire Americans. And this guy goes on this tirade before crashing out and locking his account. Worst possible time for him to do this, because we're currently having this big data center conversation, this big H-1B conversation nationally. And he shows exactly the kind of repulsive ingratitude that is been allowed to fester. They're not thankful for the opportunities that they get in America. They're not proud to come here. They're like, there's this boomerism that like all the immigrants, they come here and they just like bow at our feet and they worship us and they're so thankful. No, they're not. They're eating the dogs and cats. I was in Columbus, Ohio 2 days ago before going to DC. And giving a speech and the lady jumps up. She's like, I'm from Springfield. They're literally eating the dogs and cats in Springfield. It's crazy. And this is how we're greeted, because we're too stupid. We don't understand that they will just bring Haiti or India or Somalia with them. And that's what we're doing. You import the people, you import the culture. And that's what happened. I mean, that's what happened when we landed here, right? That's what happens. Can you trace your ancestors back to the Civil War or the Mayflower or some of the earliest settlers in America? A lot of Americans can. And that's what we did. Why would we expect them to do anything else? The real question is, who controls this place? That is the ultimate question. The Trump administration is saying we control it. President Donald Trump's administration has issued a pause on visa appointments for applicants around the world, an ongoing immigration crackdown by the U.S. government, the Republican leader's second term in the White House. The U.S. State Department spokesperson said on Tuesday that it launched a global training initiative for all U.S. embassies and consulates worldwide. The appointments for all visa services have been canceled. Trump has pursued aggressive deportation drive and immigration crackdown that includes revocation of visas, green cards, and rejections of applicants, including but not limited to Donald Trump rejecting 200,000 visas in one day through the State Department. That's the largest mass deportation in American history. That happened on Tuesday. Trump also proposing new eye-popping fee for H-1B visas and foreign workers in an immigration crackdown. So many of these H-1B workers are sitting there like as cashiers. We've gone through the actual data. You're doing H-1B jobs for like marketing teams, H-1B jobs for 7-Eleven tellers. So what does that mean? If you're creating an H-1B for a 7-Eleven teller or for anything that's not an extremely high capacity, high octane job with extreme skill required, what you're doing is you're creating blood libel, immigration fraud in order to bring your family members or more of your culture into America off the stupidity of our system that sort of blindly trusts that when you fill out the form and say we couldn't find an American for this job, that you mean that. That's not true. Of course, there are plenty of Americans that are willing to work all of these jobs. I will grant that there are some super highly technical skilled jobs, and if you're a business that needs that, there should be perhaps an avenue to make that case That should be the slimmest possible 0.1 percentage of like true geniuses throughout the world. Elon Musk would be a great example of this. Boy, howdy, am I proud that Elon Musk is an American. I certainly am. But those should be edge cases. Right now, it is the norm to hire hundreds of thousands of H-1Bs for menial tasks from bug societies where people work as slaves. And so this, not flying anymore in the Trump administration. If you raise the fee to $103,000, well, the vast majority of H-1B jobs are going to go away. You're talking 99%. Again, there are some genius level like AI jobs. You want to bring in the guy, you want to pay him $1 million a year, that $100,000 fee, that's going to be worth it. They could also pay the fee and they could still have the visa application rejected, and then you lose your money, you forfeit it. So you better, what this is saying is you better actually want this worker. Ladies and gentlemen, H-1B workers would lose 60-day job loss grace period. So now when you lose your job, you are immediately an illegal and you have to go home. And there have been just some absolutely wild aesthetics. You got this one. You got this one, Klein. Look at this. The one for asylum grant rates. Woo. The data on immigration has been incredible. I'll say this and then, okay, it looks like Ted Cruz is with us and ready. Awesome. Okay. I'll say this and then we'll jump right over to Ted. I'm blocking all black pillars. I'm done. And this is not because we were at the White House yesterday. This is not because like we can kind of see the vision. This is because if you are blackpilling right now, you are fundamentally helping to destroy my children's future. And I will have none of you. I disavow you. You can have fundamental differences with the Trump administration, and I certainly do. And you can do so from inside of the house, inside of the tent. You can become an adult and understand the gravity and the physics of just the political world. People behave like sniveling babies and then sit there and tell me that these slates of wins on immigration alone, which is frankly why I voted for Trump. No, I didn't vote for Trump for an Iran war. You're right. And yes, I do have disagreements on that. Yes, I'm frustrated about it. But I voted for Trump on immigration. I voted for Trump to save American culture, to inspire young people to fall in love, get married, and have American babies. That's why I voted for Trump. And so on this issue, it's hard to really find a way that he could be better. And yes, the DHS, everyone came after me because I talked with a source at DHS. They told me that July will be the #1 deportation month, the most deportations in American history. And sure as shooting, 55,000 deported in the month of July alone. Those numbers are breaking records. 3,600 a day, 36,000 in a single week. Once we get the actual August numbers, they told me that they have 70,000 illegals right now in lockup waiting on deportation orders. And they're sending people to Congo. They're sending some guy from Cuba got sent to the middle of Africa, the dark heart of Africa. And it's one of the most dangerous countries on earth. They're like, oh, but yeah, please send him here. It's great. Like, what a message. You better self-deport and self-deport like right now. Take your $2,000 check and go home, right? You just got paid to go home. Anyway, no black pill. You hear me? No black pilling. I'm not going to allow, like, when you're black pilling, you're helping the communists. When you're black pilling, you're helping those who wish to reopen our borders. You're helping those who wish to destroy my children's future, destroy their birthright, destroy their sacred land. And so I will have none of you. You know, I want like a purist movement here. I don't want that. We are going to fight and advance an imperfect movement because it was made by man. Nothing else is perfect on this earth except for God, what God makes and God creates. An imperfect movement, we're going to fight. That movement is the best that we have. And so we're going to fight inside of it. No blackpilling. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, is a man who also has had his disagreements with the Trump administration, has had some unique Trump nicknames. They've traded bar. That was like made for some of the greatest made for TV debate moments in history. And well, now we're all working to save the country together. That's how it should work amongst adults. Joining me now, Senator Ted Cruz. Let's go. Senator, welcome back to the program.
Benny, good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So you got a new book out about Clarence Thomas. He's an absolute rock star on this program. This audience loves Clarence Thomas. Maybe we just start up off the top with that. I really hope that this gets made into a movie one of these days, honestly.
He's an extraordinary man, and that's why I wrote the book. So it's brand new, came out just yesterday. And what this book does is it tells Justice Thomas's life, and it also chronicles his intellectual journey from far left radical to one of the most important conservative thinkers the world has ever seen. It also explains his 30 years of jurisprudence on the court, why it's so fundamentally important for our individual liberties, for free speech and religious liberty, for race, for the Second Amendment. You know, Clarence Thomas has a unique background, a unique journey to the court. He was born in rural Georgia in abject poverty. He was born at a time of brazen racism, and he overcame every disability, every challenge, every disadvantage. He was raised by his grandparents because his mom was not able to raise him. His grandfather, a man named Myers Anderson, is hugely important to understanding Clarence Thomas. He was a hard man. He was a disciplinarian. Thomas called him daddy, and he would work the boys. He would work them. He'd get Clarence and his brother Myers up at 3, 4 in the morning to go out with him and deliver fuel oil in the early morning in the bitter cold. He wouldn't let the boys wear gloves because he thought gloves were for the weak. And he worked them every day. The one exception to work, the one way you could get out of work, was reading. And Clarence Thomas's grandparents, both of them were illiterate. Neither of them could read or write. And they wanted a better future for their grandsons. And so young Clarence would spend hours at the library reading and reading and reading. He became an excellent student. And initially, his plan was not to be a lawyer, not to be a judge at all. Clarence Thomas wanted to be a priest. And so he went to seminary. He went to seminary for high school. He went to seminary for college. The world, instead of Justice Thomas, the world almost got Father Thomas. And he went and studied. He found great peace. He had found his calling. But then he got disillusioned. He got disillusioned with the church. He got angry at God because he felt the church was not being vigorous enough, fighting against racial discrimination, fighting for civil rights and equal rights. And so he left seminary. And he left the church for many years. He is once again a devout Catholic, but for many years he was angry at God, refused to attend Mass. Instead, he went to college at Holy Cross and then Yale Law School. And when he was in school, he was a left-wing radical. He wore camo pants and combat boots. He had a poster of Malcolm X on the wall. He was part of a riot in Harvard Square. He was an angry left-wing radical. He voted for George McGovern. And yet, what this book does is it tries to tell his story of how he came with all of those challenges and rose to the very highest pinnacle of law. But it also tries to chronicle his intellectual journey from angry young man, which is how Thomas refers to who he was, to an extraordinary, a generational thinker, conservative thinker on the court. And, you know, Justice Thomas wrote an autobiography. It's called My Grandfather's Son. It's an excellent autobiography. I recommend it to everybody. That autobiography ends when Clarence Thomas becomes a Supreme Court justice at age 42. This book includes the last 30 years. Thomas is today the second longest serving justice in American history. In 2 years, he will become the longest serving justice in the history of America. So what I try to do is explain his jurisprudence and do it in common sense, accessible, easy language. This is not designed. You don't have to be a lawyer to read this. You don't have to be a con law expert. This is designed so a smart high school student can pick up this book and know, who is this man, Clarence Thomas, and how did he become so extraordinary, so consequential, and it's designed really to inspire the reader about just what is possible.
We've noticed from the Supreme Court that, and this is very neat, that Clarence Thomas can read and write, and that's awesome. That's not a qualification to be on the court anymore. Ketanji Brown Jackson proves with every single decision that she makes that you no longer have to be able to read or think or write. She's now putting TikTok jargon in her dissents. And it's incredibly cringe. And I don't know if it's her trying to figure out what a woman is for the WNBA. But since you're a man of the Supreme Court, maybe your take on that. Clarence Thomas, it's got to like make him cringe every single time she talks.
Well, look, you look at Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and I think she does not operate as a judge. She operates as a left-wing ideological partisan. Her vote in every case, 100% of the time, you know where she's going to vote. It's going to vote with the hard left. Law doesn't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. She's an activist. She's a left-wing activist. She's a DSA activist pulled off the streets of Manhattan and given a robe. And that is the left's view of the court. By the way, if the Democrats ever win the White House and they pack the court, they will have an entire court of DSA activists who do not care what the law is, because for them, the court is about power. It is about imposing their power to take away our liberties. And one of the great things about Justice Thomas, so he and I have been friends for 30 years. And when I began writing this book, I came to his chambers and I asked if he would sit down for a series of one-on-one interviews with me. And we spent about 9.5 hours one-on-one talking about his time on the court. And it was interesting, Benny, when I asked him, he said, Ted, if it was anyone else, if you were a law professor, he said, I would say no. And Justice Thomas famously does very few interviews, does not give speeches. He's not particularly interested in talking to a lot of folks, but he and I have known each other 30 years. I started my career as a law clerk for Chief Justice Rehnquist. I got to know Justice Thomas then. I spent most of my professional career as a Supreme Court litigator, arguing and winning big cases before the U.S. Supreme Court. I got to know him much better then. And then for the last 14 years, I've been in the Senate and am now a senior Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and so have been actively involved in confirming or not confirming every judge for the last 14 years. And what Justice Thomas said is, he said, Ted, I think with your background, you can tell this story and make it come alive. What's interesting is the way Justice Thomas approaches opinion writing. The analogy he drew is it's like building a house, that you want to start with a firm foundation. The foundation needs to be level. You then start framing the walls. And if you get that wrong, the entire project is doomed. The walls have to be straight. The angles have to be square. And he's very much a systematic workman, where he goes to the case in front of him and he says, okay, what does the Constitution say? What is the language of the Constitution? And the reason the book is entitled Going Further is Clarence Thomas is the justice in all of American history most willing to go back to the original understanding of the Constitution, to go back to the language of the Constitution, to go back to what the framers understood the words to mean at the time. And if there's a precedent that is wrong, he is the justice most willing to overturn that precedent.
That's right.
And we talked through why that is and what that legacy is, but in area after area, race, there has never been a more consequential justice on the question of race than Clarence Thomas, because he's lived a life where he knows that racial discrimination is fundamentally wrong and evil. And that is why the Constitution explicitly enshrines a colorblind Constitution, that the federal government will not discriminate based on race. Nobody's been more effective making that case than Clarence Thomas.
So wait a second, is Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination illegal? Because we were constantly told that we're going to get a black woman for this position, which seems like it is. If you're talking about black women who you could justifiably put on the Supreme Court, you're talking about excluding 99.99% of all American society, which is insane. Of course, like, Senator, you know that if President Trump walked to the microphone and said, I'm very excited to put a white man on the Supreme Court, he'd be sued, right? Like, of course. So why did it work for Joe Biden to do that?
So I will say it was clearly discriminatory, but I think you'd be hard pressed to say it was illegal. And under the Constitution, the president's authority to make nominations is essentially has no constraints at all other than the Senate's confirmation process. There's not an additional statute that applies for it. Because it is an appointment to a lifetime judicial position. It is different than, say, Title VII, which applies to jobs. A presidential appointment is different. So I think you'd be hard pressed to say it was illegal. It was clearly discriminatory. And understand, the Democrats are a party built on racial discrimination, and they've been built on racial discrimination from the very beginning. It was the Democrats who founded the Ku Klux Klan. It was the Democrats who wrote the Jim Crow laws. By the way, it was your party and my party, the Republican Party, that was founded to end slavery. The first Republican president was Abraham Lincoln, who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. It was Republicans who passed the 13th Amendment, ending slavery. It was Republicans who passed the 14th Amendment, protecting and ensuring the equal protection of the laws. It was Republicans who passed the 15th Amendment, protecting the right to vote and preventing discrimination and the right to vote based on race. That history of racial discrimination, to this day, Democrats affirmatively, vigorously support discriminating based on race. And to this day, our party is fighting to say the law should be blind as to race. We should treat everyone equally. Everyone is a human being and judge them based on their merits.
There's a man who may be joining you in the Senate. His name's Abdul El-Sayed.
Yeah.
And he made some racialized comments recently calling for reparations, which I find ironic given the fact that there are still 7 million slaves held in Muslim countries to this very day. And that Muslim countries are the ones not only who propagate the slave trade today, but also have propagated the slave trade for all time. Yet Islam is paying no reparations. I find that unique. I also find him saying that if you're did I get this argument right on Jesse Waters a night ago? If you're circumcised, you're also transgender. Is that correct? Did you see that clip, Senator?
I did, and it was a truly bizarre talking point. Here's a crazy idea, Abdul. Don't castrate children. Don't sterilize children. And your radical ideology says if there's an 8-year-old boy and mom and dad who are woke leftists decide our son is now our daughter, don't bring in a doctor to whack off his genitals and make him permanently unable to have children for the rest of his life. That is grotesque. It is child abuse. And the analogy to circumcision was just silly. It was trying to engage in distraction. Because, look, Abdul Sayed is the tip of the spear of what we're seeing in the Democrat Party, which is the Islamists and the communists are taking over the Democrat Party. It is profoundly dangerous. That's actually one of the reasons, Benny, that I wrote the book Going Further, is we live in a time where everyone is so divided. They're angry. We're tribalized. We yell at each other. And there's so few heroes in the world. There's so few people to admire. I think Clarence Thomas is a true American hero. And I wrote this book because I wanted to tell his story. A lot of young people in particular don't know his story, don't know just how much he overcame. And so I would encourage folks, go on to Amazon right now, go on to goingfurther.com, and buy the book. It's the #1 seller in the country, the #1 bestseller in the country on Amazon. Go buy the book. And if you're a parent or grandparent, buy a copy for your kids, buy a copy for your grandkids, because I think we need heroes. I think we need role models. And you would be very, very hard pressed to find a better role model to try to emulate than Justice Clarence Thomas.
Abdul El-Sayed, and I agree with, of course, everything that you say here. Clarence Thomas is a legend to us in our show. And if we could just clone, I'm not for human cloning, but in this case I am.
I might make one exception for him.
That's right.
That's compelling.
But I am for human deportation, and Abdul El-Sayed, it represents an iconoclast of people who come here and come here from cultures that really do dislike America a lot. But his family uniquely, his sister is a psychotic radical who calls for the overthrow of our government. His mom, his biological mother, helped fund Osama bin Laden.
Yep.
And you have the filing. The filings are here with the federal government. She should have been charged with this. She has material funding of terrorism. You know, everything from Ilhan Omar helping the ISIS, writing the judges, please let the ISIS members off in my district. She did this. This is insane. Should he be investigated for that? Like, should El Sayed be investigated for potential terror ties? Listen, I've heard the comments from his sister, they are unhinged. And if his mom's funding Osama bin Laden and Baathists in Iraq and ISIS, then wouldn't that be grounds to investigate this guy?
Look, this is a family that was raised on hate. They were raised on hating Americans. They were raised on hating white people. They were raised on hating Christians. They were raised on hating Jews. It is a family of absolute race. By the way, Hassan Piker, who Abdul happily campaigns alongside, also hates African Americans. There's an irony as Al Sayed is now trying to convince black voters in Michigan to vote for him, where he's happy to associate with racists who just despise black voters as well. The only voters they don't despise are radical Islamists. It's a very small slice, but that clearly, you look at Abdul Sayed, the single biggest donor to his super PAC is his father-in-law, who helped fund a major Islamist organization that is an unindicted co-conspirator in the terror prosecutions from over a decade ago.
Wow. I did not know that. Really?
It absolutely is the case. That's his number one donor. It's his father-in-law. I chaired a hearing 2 weeks ago on the Muslim Brotherhood in America. The Muslim Brotherhood in America and the money they are spending right now. You should go back and, Benny, listen to that hearing because it was actually the day after Abdul Sayed won his primary. So I had experts testifying about Abdul Sayed's connections to the Muslim Brotherhood, to the terrorist organizations that want to murder American. Absolutely, we should be investigating and following the money. His sister is a rabid communist. She's an America-hating Islamist. She's a professor at University of Chicago who routinely says, I hate the University of Chicago, but I want power, and this job gives me power to indoctrinate children. You got to wonder what the heck is wrong with the leadership at the University of Chicago when you have professors saying, I hate you and I despise the place I work. Is there anyone with any modicum of dignity, of respect that says, hey, if you hate us, maybe you should go find another job? Like that's true in almost any other job. If you worked at ExxonMobil, if you worked at Walmart and you came in and said, Walmart sucks, you'd lose your job. They'd be like, okay, if you don't want to work here, you don't have to. Go work someplace you like. And yet our universities pay America-hating communists to undermine and attack America every day. That is his mother, his father-in-law, his sister, Abdul Sayed. By the way, he embraces Hassan Piker, who says America deserved 9/11. This is who the man is, and this is who the Democrat Party is. That's what's really frightening, Benny, is this is the beating heart of the Democrat Party. And understand, most Democrats that I serve with in the Senate, they're not Islamists or communists. They're just terrified of the Islamists and communists. They won't disagree with them because they have all the money and all the energy. And so they're just frightened out of their mind and it is this radical core. Comrade Mondami is the most powerful Democrat in America right now. And we're seeing a communist takeover of the Democrat Party.
Did you in your hearing, and my team is actually grabbing a bunch of clips right now, so it's very interesting. And we look forward to going back and rewatching this. And thank you for doing this hearing.
Yeah.
Critical work. Did anything in your hearing come up about the concept of the historic Muslim tax against non-believers? It's called a jizya. And this is a tax that is leveled against Christians and Jews in Muslim countries. They have to pay the mosque in order to exist. And I've been hearing all these clerics talk. We've been going through and sort of listening to some of these clerics, and they talk about welfare scams and daycare scams as a modern day Muslim tax on our Christian nation. They view the scamming, the mass scamming of our society as a way to defraud Christians, as a way for us to pay them taxes. Did you uncover any of that? Does that square?
There was not testimony on that specifically because what we were looking at was terrorist activity. So it was not a fraud hearing as much as it was It was violent terrorism. So we had, for example, the prosecutor of the Holy Land Foundation case who walked through what the evidence showed, that the Muslim Brotherhood made a very deliberate decision to come to the United States to invest in politicians, to take over the system from within, to take over the Democrat Party from within. But what you're saying is absolutely consistent with what we saw, for example, in Minneapolis and Minnesota, where you had at least $9 billion stolen, much of it sent back to Somalia. It was almost all stolen by Somali illegal immigrants. And here's an amazing stat. Do you know who the single largest funder of al-Shabaab, the radical Islamic terror group in Somalia, do you know who their single largest funder is?
No, I'm not sure I'm going to like this answer, Senator.
The taxpayers of Minnesota.
Come on. Yeah. Okay. That squares. That doesn't.
Yeah. Look, it is hundreds of millions of dollars went directly to al-Shabaab, stolen from the Minnesota taxpayers. And by the way, the Democrats in office in Minnesota were aware. They looked the other way. They profited from it. They were paid by the fraudsters. They funded their campaigns. They mobilized the votes for them. It was symbiotic, where the Democrats and the Somali fraudsters teamed up to rob the taxpayers of the American people, to steal that money and to send it to enemies of America who want to murder America. You actually can't. The facts are so bad, there's a reason ABC, NBC, CBS won't cover them.
I think that it perhaps is from your committee that you uncovered the Muslim Brotherhood actually aligning Islam in certain corridors in order to maximize political power. And one of those corridors is Texas. And everybody's seen the map of the number of mosques that have grown throughout Texas, and it's obscene and terrifying. And if you go back and you look at some of what your committee revealed, this is a strategic plan. We can take over
Very
Minnesota.
so.
We can take over Dearborn. We can take over Hamtramck. We can run these cities, and they're trying to do it to Texas, Senator.
Yes.
What are you going to do about that?
Look, they are, and we need, in particular, state law enforcement, state attorney general to enforce the law, because what you've seen in places like Dearborn is the next step is they try to enforce Sharia law. They try to use their extreme religious law to bind people who are not Muslims, to force them to comply with Sharia law. And that is fundamentally unconstitutional. It is illegal. Sharia law has zero place in the United States of America. By the way, Abdul al-Sayed is very vocal, saying he is bound by Sharia law and follows it in his life. And understand that the Islamists, they're not talking about an individual Muslim choosing to follow his faith. That the Constitution protects. Everyone can choose their own faith. They're talking about using the requirements of Sharia law to bind everyone, to control everyone, to go after the Christians, to go after the Jews, to make it the enforceable law of the land. And that is utterly incompatible with the Constitution. We need, in particular, law enforcement. We need the U.S. Attorney General. We need the Texas Attorney General, and we need the U.S. attorneys and prosecutors to go after those, number one, who are funneling money to terrorists, and that is happening in very real numbers. But number two, to those who are attempting to set up structures to enforce Sharia law, because that's fundamentally illegal.
Fundamentally illegal. Do you believe that Islam as a religion, and certainly Sharia law, is incompatible with Western civilization?
You know, I think I would draw a distinction between Islam and Islamism. And what's the distinction? If you look at portions of the world, there are portions of the world where you have Muslims who are peaceful, who are not engaged in violent jihad. One good example of this is India. India has hundreds of millions of Muslims, and it has a very, very low incidence of terrorism, of jihadism.
But there is terrorism in India. It does happen.
Yes, although that's actually much more ethnic and nationalist between India and Pakistan. That's not driven by jihadism. I didn't say there's an absence of war, but if you look, there's a book actually, Benny, I'd recommend to you. It's called The Looming Tower, and it's by this guy named Lawrence Wright, who's actually a lefty journalist who wrote this book right after 9/11. And he examined the origins of Islamism, where it came from. And much of its origin starts in the 30s and 40s and 50s in Egypt. And it was an extreme, basically, spin-off that It was radicals who said, we will use political force, we will use violence, we will use military force, we will use terrorism to enforce Islam on everyone, to conquer and destroy the Jews, the Christians, to conquer and destroy the other Muslims who do not ascribe to our extreme view. And that Islamism spread like a cancer through the Middle East. It's what led directly to 9/11. It is what has led to much of the terrorism we've seen. The Muslim Brotherhood today is the point of the spear. It's why for more than a decade, I've led the effort in the Senate to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization because they are actively murdering Americans. But it's worth distinguishing Islamism, the political and military and terrorist effort, from Islam, the religion. Those are separate, and we should focus on the violence and the efforts to control and hurt others.
I'm just saying we shouldn't have an open immigration policy to countries that hate us and want us dead.
Absolutely correct on that.
Huh.
We have zero obligation to let anyone in who hates America, and it's one of the most, the phrase "suicidal empathy."
That's right.
It's one of the great ways, unfortunately, the left and far too often Republicans as well have engaged in that suicidal empathy.
We wouldn't have birthright citizenship. We wouldn't have Hassan Piker. You mentioned Hassan Piker twice now in this interview. We wouldn't have him if there wasn't any birthright citizenship. And
birthright citizenship is an asinine and idiotic policy. President Trump is exactly right, fighting to try to end it, and it encourages and incentivizes very harmful behavior. And by the way, take a look at Europe. Europe is foreshadowing where America is headed. Europe is 10 years ahead of where we are right now. And if you don't want to end up where Europe is, committing collective suicide of a culture, that America needs to adopt policies that make sense and that defend our nation and who we are.
I know that you have to go, and I appreciate your time. Truly, it's always illuminating, and I love talking with you. You are on the Judiciary Committee, so if you wouldn't mind, just really quickly, and you did talk about discrimination. Is the WNBA discriminating against these beautiful transgender women that want to play in it? And you care about sports. You care about sports a lot. You're a big sports fan. You played basketball with Jimmy Kimmel once, right? Yeah. Like you've got to have some opinion on this. The Dallas Sparks or something? There's a big WNBA team in Dallas, right?
Yeah, look, I have a strong opinion on it. The WNBA are utter and complete hypocrites. They're leftists who don't know what to do with themselves. I am very, very glad you have people like Enes Freedom Cantor who's saying, all right, if you can't tell what a woman is, I'm a woman, let me play. And to be clear, if Enes plays, and he's a 6'10", was an NBA starting center for the Boston Celtics, if he played in the WNBA, he would shatter Wilt Chamberlain's record. Wilt has the record for 100 points in an NBA game. Enes, he would just stand there with the ball above his head, and the women would jump up around him, and no one could touch him, and then he'd flip it in. It would be like playing, Nerf basketball with your 5-year-old. He knows that. Royce White, who also played the NBA, has suddenly said, I'm a woman too. Look, the WNBA is not going to let them play. You asked, are they discriminating? No, they're not discriminating because they're not women. Everybody knows that. The reason
except for Ketanji Brown Jackson.
The reason this is so valuable is the leadership of the WNBA claims, we don't know what a woman is. And then it says, okay, am I one? They're like, no. Well, tell me why. And it is the incoherence and hypocrisy. But by the way, Clay Travis has he initially offered $10 million out of his own pocket for the defending WNBA world champions to play a high school boys team, and he'd give $10 million to the winner. The WNBA has not taken up on it. Clay Travis then upped the ante. He said, all right, I'll give you $10 million for the defending champions to play an 8th grade boys team that I get to pick. Nothing but 8th grade boys against the defending champions. Absolute crickets from the WNBA. And look, the reason is obvious. There is a difference between men and women. At Judiciary Committee hearings, I've asked witnesses, tell me something. What does the W stand for in WNBA? And these leftists, that their ideology is so insanely inconsistent, they cannot answer that question.
Are you going to be bringing in the CEO of the WNBA, Kathy Engelbert, to ask this? Would you commit to doing that on the Judiciary Committee?
I think it is an excellent idea. I think it's an excellent idea.
It would be. I think it'd be must-see TV, Senator. I think we could get to the bottom of this.
I think I'd kind of enjoy seeing her testify next to Ennis Freedom Cantor.
Okay. Now there it is. That's the Judiciary Committee talking. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, we look forward to that. We might even fly to DC for that one. That would be exciting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate your generous time with us in this audience.
Now, Benny, don't forget one thing, which is the most important thing, which is go buy the book. Go buy Going Further, the incomparable Clarence Thomas. Yep. Go to Amazon, go to goingfurther.com, goingfurther.com. I think you'll like it. It's a fun book. It's an interesting book. It's a story. This is not a dry academic book. It is telling you stories. All right, I'm going to close with a final story, Benny. So Justice Thomas is serving on the court. One of his colleagues is Steve Breyer. Breyer is a fairly liberal guy, but very bright and actually a very charming justice. Breyer has a vacation home down in Nevis, the Caribbean island. And one day he's down there with his wife. They're on the porch of their house, and a guy comes up with a machete and robs them. And so Breyer is at the court, and he's talking with other justices, and he's telling them what happened. And Clarence Thomas walks up, and Breyer says, "Clarence, what would you do? What would you do if you were sitting on your porch, you're playing bridge with your wife, and a guy with a machete comes up to rob you?" And Thomas pauses for a minute, and he says, "Well, I don't play bridge." And Breyer, a little bit frustrated, goes, "Okay, Clarence, let's say you're on the porch of your house playing poker, and a man with a machete comes up. What then?" Thomas pauses again and says, I don't play poker." At this point, Breyer sighs. He's like, "All right, Clarence, what would you be doing on the porch of your house?" And Thomas says, "I'd be cleaning my guns."
That's right.
"And I'd ask that guy if he wants his machete with ketchup or without."
That's right.
That's Clarence Thomas.
Or maybe
and that's a real story.
Maybe with some bacon on the end of it. You know what I mean? The Senator. All right. Here you go. Hey, we put up the link to the book. The link to the book is in the description. We love all things Clarence Thomas. And again, in favor of human cloning in this one circumstance. It's like,
amen.
God bless you, Senator. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Benny. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, Patriot Mobile keeps us connected on the road. We talk about it all the time. I guess we're going to be traveling to Dallas for the RNC convention. So we're going to be there. That's where Patriot Mobile is actually stationed. And we're going to be using our Patriot Mobile device. We got some very exciting things set up for the convention. If you're in Texas, we would love to see you. We would love to see you. And we'll take a selfie with you on our Patriot Mobile phone. We'll take all of our videos on our Patriot Mobile phone because they keep us connected on the road. Exciting times. When you go into the White House, we were in the White House yesterday, you know what they do? First thing they do is patch all down and they take your phone. If you're going into the West Wing, they grab your phone, they throw it in a lockbox. Ka-ching, lock it up. Not allowed to have your phone in there. Very interesting. There's like the Airstream, right? In the back of the C-17. It's very cool. Patriot Mobile, locked up or not, is a great device. And I would encourage you to go and get on their network. PatriotMobile.com/Benny. Call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Benny for a free month of service. PatriotMobile.com/Benny. Call 972-PATRIOT to make the switch today. We talked about the WNBA. That'll make some news. WNBA team has banned Enes Kanter. This is the team, not the league, but he's been banned from the Chicago Sky Wintrust Arena. Oh, no. This is, of course, after one of their dirtbag players went up and threatened Enes Kanter, and we did a whole live with him yesterday. It was very, it's an awesome dude, right? It's like a great guy. I got to tell you, it would be, you can see it here. He got banned for this. This angry, embittered hood rat, ratchet chick comes up and starts screaming profanities at Enes Kanter, and then he gets banned. I think that's discrimination. That's like grounds for a lawsuit, actually. Anyway, questions for another time. Tomorrow we'll be joined by John James, the future governor of Michigan, in another slam-packed show. It's going to be exciting. But ladies and gentlemen, this is our show for today and our verse of the day from John 14:27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. John 14:27. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. Beautiful words to get through our hump day together. March with us on to victory. It's your boy Benny. In the end, we win. So keep fighting. See ya.
Doomsday plane, open the door. If you want peace, prepare for war. But guess what? Everything will be okay. Guess what day it is? It's hump day.
The biggest ships in the sea, all owned by the oldest kings, and their dying legacy, media deal weeds. Soon will the Benny Show come to mind, the salt from lives for fun. Leave the gold and bring the gun, we sail for number one. Come to mind, the salt from lives for fun. Leave the gold and bring the gun, we sail for number one. The biggest ships in the sea, all owned by the oldest king.